Hi, everybody. It's Marilee from Spirit Source Healing, and this is our second podcast as promised. It is the new moon, so there's some heavy energy going around with the new moon, but we thought this would be a way of honoring the new moon and the changes that new moons can bring and journeys that can start on a new moon and changes in life. And so, the purpose of this uh, podcast is to connect people who have gifts like we do. We're on spiritual journeys, we have gifts, we're connected, and we don't have a lot of people we can talk to about it. And I want to connect people and I want to create community, which I think we really need right now. And I have the second guest is Danelle, and it's probably been about 5 years that we've known each other. And believe it or not, we are best friends. We live maybe 25 miles from each other. And we've only been in each other's physical presence twice, and those were at holistic fairs. And we act like we're best friends since we were little kids. So I just, I don't want to tell Danielle's story because the purpose of everything is for Danelle to tell her story. So without further ado, Danelle, thank you.
Thanks for having me, and congratulations on the podcast and your journey. Um, so the I guess the start of my spiritual journey was when I was a child. I'm biracial, and so was attending Baptist churches in Birmingham, Alabama, when I would visit my grandparents. It's where my father was from. And in attending these churches, they were definitely spiritual, and definitely left a huge impression on me because we would go to the church, and one of the things I found most amazing was how much the women would talk about each other. Um, and so I also remember how dolled up everyone got. Like it became like a fashion show. And I mean, don't get me wrong, my grandma definitely you know, left an impression on everyone. I mean, this is a woman who
No
had
doubt.
yeah, she had like Stuart Weitzman shoes and matching bags. And again, this is
Wow.
Birmingham, Alabama. Yeah. And so in a very Southern Baptist church. And it left an impression on me because I thought that church was different than that. And mind you, I was very young, under the age of 7. And then throughout, middle school, I had a different lens. Like, I don't really care for this narrative. And then when I would return to where I'm from, and I would attend church with like classmates, I would attend like a Lutheran church, right? And I would go to church with them. Now, my parents, I didn't go to church with my parents. I did go to church with schoolmates, classmates, I should say. But there was something about my family where I am only now as an adult realizing that my parents are more spiritual than religious. Now, they said that to me probably as adults, but I knew they were both raised, Catholic and Baptist. And but when they were adults and raising me, and some of my other cousins that eventually lived with us for a while, we didn't all go to church together, and that wasn't an experience we had. We actually had uh, a really concentrated experience in being a good humans. That's what my
That's
parents,
always good teaching.
yeah, right. I know, but it's like so my father was a crisis intervention worker and a drummer, and my mother was working for a major manufacturer of music instruments, Washburn and Gibson, and then she became a real estate broker. But she never it was always about treating people right and doing a good job. And it was really all about being a good human, for both of my parents. They always, matter of fact, as I got older, well, when I was a kid, I remember saying to them once, like, why do bad things happen to good people? Um, and that must have really been a difficult question for a little kid to ask parents, because they must have been
Yeah.
like, wow, she's seeing the bad things that are happening, you know? But growing up in a mixed race household, um, we saw all kinds of things. Like you could be in a grocery store and being followed by security for no reason. And the tactful ways my parents handled those things were great. They didn't become triggers of my childhood. I mean, I can reference it now. I haven't made that reference in decades, but it's because my parents were able to help me navigate the low vibrational things that were happening around me. And they were doing it by teaching me in very layman terms. Like, for example, um, at a very young age, my father used to say to me, protect your energy. And like at 8 years old, you really don't know what that means. Matter of fact, what is energy? Like, I just figured he meant protect your good mood, or your happiness as a kid. But then when he would say it, that was in elementary school, and then he would say it in middle school, and then he would say it frequently in high school. And then I lost my father when I went to grad school, which was probably in my it was in my 30s, my early 30s. Is that right? Yeah. So I never understood what he meant by protect your energy. And here it is now at 52. I'm about to be 53. I understand it better than anything. And I'm starting to wonder if so my journey started because the church failed me in what my understanding of, God and people and religion. And mind you, where I grew up, there is a church, there's a temple for the Baha'i temple. And I
Mhm.
remember researching the Baha'i temple and finding out that it's like a series of, it's not one religion per se.
Encompasses them all.
Right. And so that
The,
was growing up in that community, it's one of the most breathtaking temples I've seen. But I'm not a vastly world traveler. So, give me a 5 years and I might see
and the
some.
fact that it sits in Wilmette, Illinois, just off of the Wilmette Harbor on the lake, and you can take a boat almost right up to it. And
Yeah,
there
I
it
mean, you
is.
could just drive down Ridge Avenue, and pass by it, just it's really a beautiful. I don't take it for granted. Let's just say that. And so I started realizing like, oh, you can, because I always thought like, well, I like a little bit of this religion and I like a little bit of that, and I think that's when I ultimately started realizing that um I was becoming more spiritual because I couldn't align myself with one religion, but I also realized as I became older that I had gifts. I knew my mother had it, I knew my grandmother had it, um, but I didn't know I had it. I knew as a child my mother would play games with me, mind exercises, really telepathic exercises to be able to communicate
I think you
telepathically.
told me she used to tell you to touch your third eye, your
Yes,
Asha. And
but she used to ask me to, she'd always say, I'm thinking of a number, or like she would always, um, we would always learn to lock in. And what was really interesting is that, um, that was when I was young, like
right.
7, 8, very young.
But
But
you
again,
didn't
I didn't.
question it because it was your mom. So
Right, exactly. I just thought it was a game we were playing, like we
hmm,
would play a lot of little games, like going to the grocery store, who could figure out the estimate of the cost of the groceries and whoever won,
right.
but that taught me how to guesstimate and do math. So we always played those types of mental exercises. But my mom didn't have crystals in the house. You know what I'm saying? Like my mom was not a beatnik. She was not a hippie at all. She grew up in a
Oh,
very strict household.
my mom probably thought I was going to be because it's 6 years old. Hang on, is it back here? Yeah, at 6 years old. I asked her to buy me this.
Wow.
And at the time, it
Good
was
taste.
$5. Now, I don't know how that translates, but for a 6 year old to ask for this, but she bought it for me, and I have kept it somewhere where I knew where it was my entire life. This, so yeah, you don't
That's
have to have
so
the
meaningful.
there.
So
Yeah,
meaningful. Well, I didn't, but I mean, like, I just want to preface this by saying, like, my parents were not hippies. They weren't like this black and
right.
white couple that were like, no, not at all. My dad was doing the civil rights movement. My mom was being tortured in a toxic household in the city of Chicago because of, parents with childhood wounds that were never resolved. But that being said, I didn't grow up in a household where they were burning incense, and crystals everywhere and like beaded doorways, none of that. Okay. So I wasn't influenced by that. And I didn't actually see my parents meditating or anything like that. My spirituality came by my mom teaching me how to use my third eye and listen to my intuition. My father actually was grooming me to protect my energy. I really never realized how spiritual my father was until I got older because he passed when I was young, passed in '06. And I've had for like the last 20, like 2 decades almost, right? Just shy of 1 year from that. But I've almost had 2 decades to reflect on all the things that he said. And in doing that, I can tell you, my father was very spiritual. And that is why I grew up with like them using energy all the time, like
Right.
that's bad energy, so a lot of times I'll reference things and I'll use the word energy. And where does that come from? Like, who? I didn't read a book on that. I didn't have an energy coach. Where'd that come from? And that came from my parents. And I've always believed that my parents, quite honestly, were angels, earth angels, that because they always help
Yeah,
people, and they help
yeah,
volumes of people. And when I look at what I do now, um, it's amazing. I feel like I'm an extension of them because I am helping many people in my line of business. At my in my day job, I help a lot. Oh, and
right.
all my
In
kids.
the quote unquote real world, which
Yeah,
this is the real world.
in the 9 to 5, I help people and I
Right.
get paid for it. And then even I forgot my mom's legacy, Grandma's Follies. That's a lot of people that I'm trying to help have a better day, help not get consumed in the low vibrational things that are happening around us all the time. Um,
And that's
so
hard. That's hard because your mom
very
was
hard.
able to do that and keep people up. And your mom definitely had a gift because I don't know if I could do that daily and find like the 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 thing that's gonna, and the energy of the day is
The
I
bandwidth. Yeah, to find the
pardon me.
bandwidth to be able to do the bandwidth. A lot of
Oh
people
yeah.
like yeah, a lot of people are like, do you have the bandwidth to come out? Now they ask that. Before they'd be like, are you going to meet us at the lake for a walk? And now they say, hey, if you want to meet us at the lake for a walk, if you have the bandwidth, and I think everyone's realizing like if you're in that mental space, because like we're realizing now we're being more sensitive to each other's energy. Like I think some of us, not all of us, but to
Oh,
preface
so
what
you
you,
are literally talking about if
the
you're,
mental,
because I had
cap-
never heard it, that I had never heard our energy, our ability to engage on a spiritual level as bandwidth. Yeah, I mean, there are times where I know like the bandwidth is always there. It's just whether it wants to be on or not, and whether I want it on. Because yeah, the boundaries of that. Your dad was teaching you boundaries, and
yes.
I just had never heard it put that way.
Well,
So
when they say
yeah.
bandwidth, I think it's a general term. I don't think it's specific to spirituality, but I think it's a good segue. So when we were referring to my mom, what Marilee and I were referring to is that my mother started a community on social media, and she had been nurturing that community and growing that community for the last 10 years of her life. And when she passed, I immediately jumped in and took over the brand. And so that's what we're talking about. And the brand uplifts people, tries to just have positive content, and it's basically a curated it's like an energy of positive, funny, silly, you know, and just high vibrational. It's not spiritual. It's all just about like silly, but things that
Right. The
pertain to this.
dog bouncing down the stairs or whatever,
Yeah, right. Or something, just
yeah,
funny things or like uplifting things because the target audience is like, 50 plus. So I agree to be able to show up for that audience for 10 years the way she did is remarkable. That's why I won't let it fall to the wayside. But what I have learned in seeing how I've become more spiritual in my spiritual journey is that my father helped me realize that what I thought was anxiety all these years is not necessarily anxiety. Sometimes it's just other people's projected energy, and I'm sensitive to energy. So if I'm sensitive, then that means that I'm going to pick up. The minute I walk in a room, I'm going to pick up on the low vibrational. There may be one person in there who's got really heavy energy, and I'll pick up on it. Or, um, yeah, so like I think just now I'm realizing that some days I need to just stay at home with my dogs, or like I'm just not so quick to go out in the street for nonsense. Like I'm more intentional, right?
yeah,
About my energy, and I am intuitive. I what I just recently learned is that just because your intuition tells you that something happens and you try to avoid the outcome that could happen. Like, let me give you an example. For weeks, um, my intuition was telling me I was going to lose my house key when I took the dogs for a walk. And
oh,
I was like, oh, I'm going to better be careful with that. So I was very intentional every time I took the dogs for a walk to not lose my key. I have two sets of key, the one with the car key on it and the house key, and one that just has the house key and I don't know what else on it. So I was taking just the house key. Anyway, I went on a walk. They took them for walks for weeks, didn't lose the key. And then the last ice storm we had, I was rushing to get to work and decided to try to take them out at the same time. Well, that was stupid when it's an ice storm, right? So they basically on that walk, I thought I had lost the keys because I did lose the keys. I got locked out. I had both the dogs. It was a real thing.
right.
Well, 2 months later, I find the key at the bottom. Once snow had melted, there's the key, not even 4 feet from my
Yeah.
front stairs.
And you're like to
And
the dogs, why didn't you sniff that out?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I'm like, what? No, that was the day they ran me into the tree and I hurt my
yeah,
shoulder and broke my knee, all that shit, all that stuff.
yeah,
But it was a teachable moment. I learned a lot. I learned a lot. But I knew I was going to lose the keys. That's all I'm saying. I had been told, and no matter how
right.
vigilant I was, I still lost them. And secondly, so there's a point to this. They had been telling me that a dog was going to get cut. And I was like, well, this is ridiculous. So, and I heard them and I would be like, oh, well, note to self. So, I don't know if you notice it, but sometimes glass comes up from the earth. I don't know if anyone notices that, but in my backyard,
Yeah, crystal. Yeah. Well, because I don't know if it's actually, it's crystal, probably not glass.
no, no, no. We
Glass,
like the I've as long as I've been in this house for 20 years, I know we're throwing stuff in the backyard long before I came. Bricks, stuff like that. But like the
God,
leftover remnants of building this house, even, I don't know. But I'll walk around the perimeter of the yard and you can sometimes see that glass comes up. Like there's no one in my backyard throwing broken glass, right?
right, right,
So, and I'm landlocked, so no one is really getting in here. But every season when the weather's changing or getting warmer or throughout the summer, you glass comes to the anyway. So I figured
oh,
maybe it's going to be a chunk of glass, um, or something coming up in the soil. Or maybe it's this gutter on the back of my shed that the extender's off of, and now there's raw metal, right?
right.
So like after like one day I'm walking past the gutter and I go, you know what, let me put this over the gutter to prevent any cuts. All right, fast forward to 2 weeks ago, we get another really cold weekend and my backyard we went from like warm to freezing.
Right, yeah, that
So,
we had a, yeah, it was like a 40-degree difference with,
right.
yeah,
So I
only
had water.
Only Chicago,
Yeah, only
right?
Chicago, right? So bipolar weather. So I had this like area where it's more water than soil, right? And so that turned into slush and then it froze. And I believe that when my dogs come out, they run out
Oh,
to
yeah.
scare rabbits, like like they're running in a
Oh my
field.
God. Yes.
And
Well,
he stepped on, I think, a piece of frozen slush that was sharp like glass, but it was
yeah.
ice. And I think that cut his foot. He got cut. It wasn't the
Yeah.
gutter, it wasn't the glass. And even though I have been vigilantly paying attention and intentional, he still got cut. And so I realized, even though your intuition is telling you things are going to happen, you can't always stop them. Now, I have
Well,
stopped one. I have stopped a bad incident, and it involved a life. And that
well,
person
that's,
is alive. That person's alive to tell it. But these little incidents, I can't seem to stay ahead of. And but it's
well,
interesting. It's interesting.
I think the fact that, you acknowledge the, because you and I have different intuitive gifts. I don't have that. I have a guide who stops me from tripping over stuff. And I've told you about him. And I every time there's something that could have happened, I just thank him and go about my day because he's going to be with me for the rest of my life. And but it's a different kind of, like, it's not that sometime in the future you will trip over something. It's actually right now you're tripping, grab that, like, like I'm in
Yeah.
the air. Okay. um uh it was interesting because I got that guide before anybody said that there were those types of guides. So I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is. And then 2 weeks later, I took a class. And they're like, yeah, and you have a guide that keeps you out of everyday trouble, like tripping over things.
Oh my God.
So
You're like, I
anyway,
sure do. Yeah,
I
well,
do.
I when I was in high school, I was at a party and um let's just say it was underage drinking and
Assume
but
that
I
when you
I
say
wasn't,
party high school, we can assume that's what it is.
yeah, I wasn't drinking. Um I'm not saying that to be like goody two shoes. I'm just saying like
You
I
weren't drinking.
overheard. I wasn't drinking because I overheard the guys in the basement talk about it was like grain alcohol, and I didn't know what
Oh,
that was. And they were like, "We're gonna get them messed up." So I overheard them talking, so I knew it was a plot. Okay, so since I heard the plot, I wasn't drinking. So I was hanging out outside the house, and one of the guys, actually the guy that was discussing the whole liquor thing,
the
uh, went
plan.
out, went outside and told my friend if she wanted to go for a motorcycle ride, she could. And she loved motorcycles. So she was like, all right, I'm totally gonna go, and my intuition said no. Matter of fact, my intuition was like, no. And this is a best friend since second grade. Excuse me. So, high school, second grade, we, thicker than thieves, and we're still besties. And I kid you not, she did not get on the motorcycle, but I had to ask probably about 8 times. And I probably was rude and was like, "You're not getting on. Like, why
Yeah.
are you so passionate about it?" Right? Um, well, 45 minutes later, he takes off on the motorcycle immediately after I insisted no. And which is crazy. Like, who listens to their peers like that, right? So she did. 45 minutes later, the police show up at the house and ask us if a gentleman on a motorcycle left the house. And they pulled up to me and her and somebody else. And I immediately said no, because I didn't want anybody to say yes. I said, no, no one was here on a motorcycle. Why do you ask? And he goes, because he just died. He drove the motorcycle into a brick wall over by the so and so and so. And I was like, wow. So that was when I think my
That
friends
was when your
realized,
friend decided to listen to everything you say. Yeah.
yeah, it
I didn't
was.
mean
It
to
was.
interrupt.
And
Sorry.
it was. And you're right. And it also was when I realized I had a different um Spirit guide. Like, you see, I hear people like not all the time, like no one's saying anything right now. And although I did just hear my father laugh. Here lately, I can hear my father like never
That's so
before. So I
great.
know
Because I,
I've had some ascension the last year.
yeah,
Something
I'm so
changed in me.
happy for you. Yeah.
Oh, it brought tears to my, I can hear my father, and he's oh God, he's been deceased since '06, and I am just now, when he first passed over, he was communicating, but he was yelling and it was making my third eye hurt really bad. And I said, "Can you please learn how to control your volume a little bit and then come back?" And then he never came back. So
But he
I and
did
then
then.
but it took,
Yeah.
19 years. Um but I can hear him now. And I know it's him. So here's what I want to tell people. How do you know that voice is that you might be hearing on the other side? I know by the terms they use, right? My father called me sugar, like or he had a silly laugh, like you hear that laugh, or
You know, it's your dad.
yeah, like it's your dad, like, or if they say, like this is no one says this to me, but like, what if all of a sudden I hear anybody got time for that, and that's like, oh my gosh, that's my auntie from Connecticut, or whatever.
Right.
It's the little, it's the tone, it's the inflect, the different
Right.
way that they say things. It's it's the slang,
Inflection.
the
Yeah.
inflection, all
Accent.
of it. Yeah, that's how
When
I can tell who it is.
the first time I went to a medium and I really wanted to talk to my mom because there were just things I felt I was carrying. And I'm just trying to hook into your story, not, um, but
How can you talk about your mom and not tear up? Like,
right, yeah. Um,
yeah.
so finally, she called me a few minutes early. She's like, "Do you mind if we start early?" And I said, "No problem, we can do that." And I started heading up the stairs. She's like, "Because I was going to call and cancel because I have a migraine. Then I realized I have a migraine because your mom wants me to talk to you," which I I didn't know that side of my mother. My mother my mother worked, she was an adult during World War II, and she worked during World War II. And according to letters from her brother's home, she was a bulldozer. And that was not the side of my mom that I saw. But this there the yeah, I could just, I could see her like, no, it's me, and you're gonna do this because she's ready. And my mom basically, she brought everybody through, like, you know talk to my sister, talk to the dogs, everybody was brought through my mom. But then after a while, they started coming on their own. They realized they didn't need my mom to come. And
Hmm.
um so I didn't mean to take,
No, I think no, but this helps people understand. Like, my mom and I could communicate telepathically when she was living,
right.
but I just knew when she passed that
Yeah.
we would be able to communicate. My father leaves me dimes. I have a jar full of dimes. And it's really interesting because whenever I have a difficult time or something's just really tough, like I live alone, I don't really have, well, like world's smallest violin. I got to stop saying that because, like, probably, 40% of our society live alone. Like, you live alone, I live alone, but I'm just saying, like, there isn't a person to have a sounding board all the time, right? There isn't
Right.
someone to wake up and be like, oh, I'm so nervous about this presentation or whatever, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so a lot of what I deal with myself, right, as you do
Right.
too. And I think that our soul tribe, our spirit guides, our loved ones on the other side, they try to help us. And sometimes when I'm in my mind about things, because I'm not sitting on the couch having a full-on conversation about the challenges of the day, but when I'm in my mind thinking about things, they can pick up. you
Yeah,
But
Mom, I know you're up there, you're in the collective consciousness. Can you come down and just help me with this problem? Sit down, sit down. I know it's not your couch because,
yeah, just come
I
on,
love
sit
it.
down.
I love it.
But
You're awesome.
my dad lets me know he feels me. I hear you, I see you, we are right there. And he
Right.
does it by leaving one dime. That actually is a ball of dog hair. But he left the last time he left me one, it was right next to his drum that I put a piece of marble I got at a thrift store on top of for a little desk next to my desk. And it was right next to the drum on the ground. And I try to sweep daily now that I got this robot vacuum thing, and it just appeared because it wasn't there, it hadn't been there before. So I am confident that our loved ones leave us signs, like my
Oh,
mother
they
was
do.
showing me hearts. Like I'd cut an apple and the core was in the shape of a heart, or
Perfect. Yeah.
yeah, or like the windows were getting steamy because I had like a pot of soup on, and the frost in the window had like the shape
Oh,
of a heart. So I am confident that they are walking with us, but I also know that they are greatly disturbed. Like whenever I have like a deep cry, I hear my
yeah.
mom go, "Oh, sweetie," and I always hear her, "Oh, sweetie," and I know. I have not had a reading yet since my mom passed, and it'll be 2 years in July. I don't know what I'm waiting for. But I part of it is I'm
I
waiting
think
for my.
we're waiting for the right medium because I didn't say this in my last, but I am not a medium. I am not a tarot card reader. I
Hmm,
don't go, I wasn't, I was trained in the Akashic records. I know my own astrology, but occasionally I'll get called, I'm a medium. Occasionally I'm in the Akashic records. So if it happens, I'm just trying to say that
I'm
like I
glad you
have all this
disclosed it.
stuff,
Yeah.
but control it. And in a way, I think it's better because then the reading that I'm giving has more depth to it because I'm not just saying, okay, your aura looks like it's fine. Oh, wait, it,
Right.
there's an element where I don't know. It doesn't happen every time, but
Oh
anyway,
yeah, me too. And it's interesting now. I know the feeling when when I'm channeling. That's the other thing. Oh, I just got a high pitch. When I was a nanny, I was in the grocery store. I just dropped the kids off, and I was going to pick something up for the family at the grocery store. This is a real fluent community. And their store is like tiny, this is not, it's like a mom and pop grocery store. And like their produce section is like, the size of, your
the size
front
of my
hall.
dining room.
Yeah, yeah, it's not big. And so I'm in this tiny ass produce section, and this lady, there aren't a lot. There used to be a lot more brown people in the area, but they pulled that eminent domain on them and took their property. So there were fewer black families that were still in this area. And there was a woman there, and I went to her to acknowledge her, like, hello. And she looked sad, and I was like, oh, I hope you're okay. And she said, I lost my mother. And I said, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. And then all of a sudden, I said, well, I'm sure she wants you to be okay, sweet. And I said, whatever I said, that woman was looking down, and she looked up at me, and she was like, that's exactly what my mother used to say to me. And I went, okay, I'm sorry. Sometimes I channel
I
things.
have
And that's when I started realizing I channel things. Listen, and then like 2 decades later, no, more than 2 decades, probably like 3 decades later, I'm in Detroit in the produce section again. And a lady stops me and starts freaking out, talking about my light. I have this amazing bright light around me.
you
And
do.
she started crying, and my friend came. We were there for a funeral, and as I say that, the sun comes in and looks crazy. But the friend that I was there getting stuff for the family for the repast, she ran over. She was like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, girl, I'm fine. This woman is inviting us to her church. um So I over the years I've seen people come to me and I've heard that light thing more than once. I've talked to a random stranger. Um, there's little things also, like I've just found out I was an empath in
Oh,
2019. I didn't know that
yeah.
until a person we worked with stopped and asked me one day, "Are you an empath? This is at work." And I said, "I don't even know what that is." This was
I'm
like,
surprised because we been working together. No, we started
no,
working together in 2020. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So
Because I would
20,
have caught that real quick.
no, this was 2019, right before the big shutdown. And she was like, "Are you an empath?" And I was like, "I don't even know what that is." And then I went home and she's like, "Please look it up." And I cried for hours because I had no idea. This is why animals respond to me. This is why children respond to me. This is why strangers feel safe. This is why my entire tank is rescue fish. This is why I have two rescue. It explained so much about why I am so connected to the well-being of nature, people, animals. Um,
You probably have a lot of earth in your natal chart.
mm, yeah.
I'd have to see it, but you
So
probably because like I have none.
oh, really?
Yeah. I'm up
Interesting.
I'm up here flying. I'm burning in the clouds. But I don't yeah, I have to really ground myself. I just literally found that out in the last 2 weeks that I had none.
Wow. Yeah,
So
it pays to look at your chart at different phases of your life because your understanding, when you're 20, excuse me, versus your understanding at at 50 is like, because you know yourself so much better at 50 than you did, when you were younger. For me at least. I can't speak for everyone else, but as an only child, I always wanted to be around people. And I think that's why my dad was telling me as a young kid, protect your energy. You're bored now because you don't have siblings, but my mom was tortured by some of her siblings. So it's like for her, she's like, oh God, you should be so lucky. My middle brother was chasing me around with a knife. Like, that's not okay. So I just think that my spiritual journey was literally that. It was a journey. And when I started seeing crystals, that I started feeling really connected to them. And honestly, the more and more I purge, it's kind of funny. It's like I just love my crystals. So I love the story of how you've had your crystals since you were a child. Um, I just love that. And I don't know, there's certain things that I'm realizing are like plants and my fish tanks and always having animals and always rescuing the animals and um I don't know, it's just people have always felt comfortable saying things to me, and now at work I realize that I have been working with neurodivergent students and neurodivergent colleagues, and I just know that I'm sensitive and not just empathetic, but like I feel like I'm divinely guided. Like I feel like I was divinely guided to you so that I could work on my ascension because I feel like I have ascended since our relationship, and it wasn't because it was because we talked about it. We both had an outlet.
right.
We both went and met at the fairs and
It was like, hey, are, do you do anything like kind of woo woo?
well, it was funny because we were trying to figure out how to like connect beyond the virtual world because we kept meeting virtually because of work. And
Yeah,
then you were like, hey, and everyone was like, pandemic. So it was like, where can you go? And then you were like, hey, are you into like, I think we were talking about energy and you knew that
right. Because Reiki is somewhat more acceptable now that when I was trained 30 years ago, people are like, what's that?
yeah,
So
yeah,
okay.
now, I mean,
You
it's,
can't
yeah.
step down off a curb and not bump into a Reiki person. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's far more prevalent than
I'm
before.
not saying there's anything wrong with it. I think the Reiki energy, the universal energy is going to help. It's going to assist with whatever's coming. It's going to be there for whatever's coming. So
Well, so
Yeah,
I realized my ascension was when the pandemic hit, I was working on my ascension. I had a breakup at the time that made me go inward and look inward a little bit,
yeah,
not a little bit, a lot of it. And just the crisis of the world made me look inward and find my calm space because things were so unclear and so confusing and scary that the flight or flight, I felt the only way to offset that was to get grounded. And that's exactly what we did. I mean, we literally were walking outside barefoot. We were
yeah.
blowing bubbles, which we realized was breathing exercises. We were like, oh, we love this. Why do we love this so much? And I'm like, oh my
Right.
God, it's like we're smoking a cigarette, but we're
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 not.
blowing. It's like it was
But we're blowing
hilarious.
instead of, yeah. Oh my
Yeah, it's
gosh.
funny.
That is so
Yeah,
funny.
it was funny. So we realized that uh I think my mom and I really worked on enjoying who we were. We didn't know. It was like us against the world. Like we didn't know if this was, we didn't know what we were dealing with. So we just tried to stay calm and organized and enjoy each other. And I'm so glad we had lockdown together. That was probably one of the
You
biggest
had,
rewards. But one of her friends used to be graphic designer and had some disease that caused her eyes to deteriorate. And she started selling crystals because I guess she always loved crystals. And she started
yeah,
doing them live on Facebook and I went through a spell and I bought quite a few. I mean, I have a quartz crystal right here. Matter of fact,
yep. I've got
this
my,
one, this one spoke to me. I think
oh,
this one was from where did I get this
that's a
one? I
geode
swear.
of crystal. That's a geode. That's not, oh, that's
Oh,
gorgeous.
what
It's a
is it?
geode. It's like it's like that, only quartz. It's a geode. It's like mine, only they would have broken something to get in there and see that.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
geode.
So but this is like the real cool one is on the third floor where I'm setting up my meditation um
Well, you're gonna have to
area.
take a picture of that, and because I wanted to um tell a story about you if it's okay.
Yeah,
Um, our second foray into uh fairs, spiritual fairs, was I think yeah, it was in February of no March May of 2024, and there was a woman there who said she could get you into the Akashic records. Now I've got training. I'm supposed to be able to get into the Akashic records. I've never been able to do it on my own and nothing like this. So Danielle is sitting next to me on my right, and there's a woman behind me. She can't see her, and I'm wearing a hat. Okay, so I don't know how she knew, but um, the uh, the woman who was leading it, she said, just ask something light. Don't you don't want something heavy in front of all these people. And I was like, oh, okay, just what do I need to know today? I thought that was light. I don't know why that wasn't, but um the minute she said we were in the Akashic records, my head went down, my arms, I couldn't move. But uh, the it was like the Nile down my shirt. I could not stop crying. And Danielle put her hand on me, which helped. And then the woman behind me put her hand on my other shoulder. And that helped me through it. And the at the end of at the end of it, because I'm like, I'm surprised she didn't come to me. She had to have noticed what was going on with me. I mean, my shirt's all wet. Like,
oh, we were in the front row. So yeah,
yeah.
she saw it. Yeah.
So but she, she came over and she said, well, what did you ask? And I said, what do I need to know today? And she said,
Yeah.
well, you didn't come to play, did you? I guess not. But then I went into and had a reading with her later. And but it was just it was something I needed to know and has helped me. It helped me break some karma, and it has helped me it has in the year, it's helped me improve my relationship with my children, which is what the question was really all about.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That
Uh,
is fantastic. I didn't know that. That's fantastic. Yeah, kids
yeah.
are funny. I don't have any children. But I gotta tell you, it is probably one of the most, you need to be spiritual to get through that. I mean, they can, I mean, I was just talking to one of our coworkers the other day, and it's so sad because he said, I was in a meeting and my dogs were excited, and he could see that they were like, "Come
Right.
on, mom, let me out." And he's like, "Oh, I missed that. Maybe I should get a dog." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "Oh, I used to come home from work and my kids used to be so excited to see me, and now I
Mhm.
can't even, now I can't even schedule any time to see them." And then, and I was like, "Oh gosh, that's got, that's not the first." I'm at the phase now, my friends, I should say, that are my age are at the phase now where their kids are out of the house and they don't want to be around them like that. Like they'll come in the house because they need somewhere to live because it's so expensive now. But ultimately, the
Right.
kids don't really want to spend quality time with the parents. And they've
Right.
crossed that corner now. So, and most of my friends are like, well, good riddance, get to step in, they're ready for the kids to start their life. But then if some parents are just like, like our coworker, he was like, "Ugh, I just want him to need me again." He's like, "Maybe I'll just get a dog." And I was like, "Well, they will need you and love you,
They
but
will need you
your
every
kids,
day, every
well,
morning, every
but hopefully, you can only hope that the children come back and appreciate the strong bond with their parents, and it takes time."
well, um, I will not say my children's names or anything like that. And since the last name is different, but for an entire year, I did not acknowledge her birthday because she didn't want me to. Christmas, whatever it might have been, I made no contact because that she had ghosted me, and I just said okay. And then my last birthday, she texted and said, "Mom, can I call you later around 5 your time?"
What do you think? Well, I don't want to digress. So I think we'll talk about this when we go to
Right.
lunch. Yeah. But I think that I do believe that our spiritual work, be it if you're meditating, if you're seeing practitioners to work through energy and to channel, like I remember when we got our aura reading. Matter of fact, I got to pick that up. I let the guy at work look at that and he didn't remind me yesterday. He has it still. But it was fascinating because I thought all my chakras would be, the size of like, this, and actually one was this size, but the rest were like, open and active. And I just feel like we are constantly checking in as women, even as humans. I don't want to negate the struggle that men experience. So as humans, we're trying to make the money, that we're trying to, we're doing all the business, the adulting stuff, right? Um, and you're taking care of your kids or you're helping your extended family, whatever it is. Even if you don't have kids, you have people you're still helping, right? Or working
Right.
with.
And I have 3 dogs.
Right, yeah, and I have two dogs and cousins and and nieces and all that, but or not niece, well, it's pretty much a niece, but I think we lose sight of getting ourselves centered and grounded. And I at 52, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, at 22, 32, I was moving around, moving and shaking, trying to do stuff, trying to do the most. But now I see the beauty of a good walk with the dogs, a good meeting with a landscaper with a plan for the backyard, intentional things, because that's where I feel my peace. That's where I get a lot of grounding in the summer. Like I remember the first day I was able to take the dogs into the forest preserve on a walk. That was like my dream. But two
Yeah.
90-pound dogs and I weigh 180 pounds. Um, I can handle it. But it just was a huge victory the first time we walked through. And I just thought,
Yeah.
oh, we did it. Now I'm like, let's buy land, so so at this point I am listening to myself and I know I want to be more in nature. And I do know that a lot of us were called to duty during the pandemic, and a lot of us high vibrational or people, let's just call us, you know,
Those who
energy
were
bulk.
called.
Yeah,
Those
those
who,
who were called were called. Well
right.
said, Marilee. Well said. Those who were called were called. And I remember there was this one guy, Master, I can't remember his name, and he used to do a meditation in the morning and at night. And it was people from all over the world.
You're on
And
YouTube or
yeah, on
something.
YouTube. Yep. And he used to have us he would tell us the lesson for the day with the story, and then we would meditate before we went in. He would hear a story, and then we would meditate out, and we would visualize the earth, and then we would protect the earth with the white light, and then we would move. It was just a beautiful exercise, but I felt it. I could feel the masses. I mean, you also could look at the YouTube and see how many views and how many people were watching live, because we were
Right.
watching it live and we were watching it be recorded. And and the long and the short of it is that I started strengthening my spirituality in during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was becoming aware of it in my, from high school to college to post college, but I was so busy trying to be a success and to use my college degree and to pay, just to pay bills and buy real estate and get a car and do the things you're supposed to do, that I forgot about managing spirituality. And I think a lot of people are like, exercise, get your exercise. And they don't realize
Yeah.
that meditation
I,
is exercise.
I think um, dancing is a form of meditation.
Oh, yeah.
Running, when I used to run, um, I used to look forward to Sunday mornings if it was misting out, not raining full out, although I would still run if it was full rain, and this would be in the summer. And if it was misting out, and I would run 10 miles in that,
Mm.
and not, I I can't tell you how I got from my home back to my home, but it didn't matter. It was what was going on in my head. And it there are so many things that we do that are meditations and we don't realize that they're meditations, and we can bring it more into our lives. So yeah. Um I did you want to finish up with something or
No, that's it. The biggest thing was I started focusing on it more when I knew the masses needed it and there was chaos. And so the pandemic was a great time for me to focus on how to support myself. And then you and I
Mhm.
started talking about it more. So that's why I feel like you were led to me to help me work on myself, because I don't get that from anybody else I'm around. They give
Yeah.
me different things, I imagine, but you were like a spiritual coach, and you didn't even sign up for it. It
Well,
was like,
I apparently am for people. I told you about the young man on Instagram, right? Um, People, if you know how this could have happened, I sent something on Instagram to just people I know, close friends, and somehow it got to this young man, and he wrote back. It sounded like the tone of it seemed like he was so mad that I had, like, how did you get? I don't follow you, blah blah blah. And I'm looking at myself. I'm like, I don't follow him. I don't know how this happened. And then he called over Instagram and he's like, thank you. I needed to hear this because he is just starting to fix his relationship with his mother. And I don't know how Instagram did that. Now we're friends, but we talk like every 2 weeks, and he's a good kid. He just needed somebody to go, wake up, you know.
yeah, look how you helped him. And
Mhm.
like that, your children came full circle. I mean, I'm just saying, like, karma is real. And
Mhm.
when we help others, it doesn't go unseen. So when I ask my parents, why do bad things happen to good people? Because good things happen to good people too. You just don't always see them.
Right. Right. Right.
You don't
Yeah.
see it. It's not always like a visible thing, like it's not a visible exchange, right? Like, like
The
maybe.
$1 billion lottery winner versus the old woman who for 5 years had been going in on every Thursday and playing a scratch off and won $3 million. A friend of mine's grandmother did that. Yeah,
Oh
I
my
would take
gosh, you
that.
know what? Yeah,
Yeah.
or the person that um uh whose taxes went up, but the mass on their neck came back non-malignant.
Right.
I'll deal with those taxes, honey, because so I just feel like, it's not, maybe the mass was there, but the actual blood work was phenomenal. The mass was not bad, the blood work. So we start losing sight of what really matters, and I just feel like the
Right.
blessings are coming constantly. Just because you don't see them pinned up on your wall as big as these TVs out here doesn't mean that it isn't existed. Doesn't exist.
Right. And I guess that I think you and I agree on this, that um I'm I'm going to be attempting to go live at some point. I'm still learning how to do this, and then have questions. And I think I think that would help engage. But if you have questions, you can post them in the comments and I will get back to them. Now, if it's a major metaphysical question, I will probably acknowledge it in the next thing, that it would be impossible for me to write a metaphysical question that, but that is a plan for me to go live at some point. And I I have so enjoyed having Danielle here as a guest, and she's on her journey, and maybe she'll come back and tell us, like, as she keeps going and things keep opening up and her ascension keeps happening, what has her journey turned into? That'll be amazing.
It
So
is. Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's fun to share that I can hear my father's voice because it's taken a long time for him to come back. But I do think everyone needs to continue to work on yourself, make some time for your growth.
yes, I agree. And well, from spirit source healing, and from me, Marilee, and from Danielle, thank you for being here today. And again, my goal is to do this live. So thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. So then you stop your recording. There's a little record button. Did it record? Oh yeah, it's recording. Yes, 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 yes. Thank God.
Where is the
And
button? Oh, there it is. Up at the top, always where like it's the last thing you want. Protect yourself. No.
no, it should be at the very bottom. There's a
Oh,
little
pause
round
record.
button with.
There we go. Okay.
There we go.
All
Good.
right. I'm gonna
Awesome.
have to figure out how to edit that.
Supposed to do.
Oh,
Oh wait, you
fucking
just.
A.
Yeah.